Let's revise complete settlement geography. First of all, let's see what is settlement geography. It is study of how people or societies aggregate and live in urban or rural conditions and associated elements like land use pattern, infrastructure, development, and problems. So, why is settlement geography important and what is the relation between settlements and geography? First of all, settlements are very rarely static, so they are dynamic and therefore they grow, which is interest for in geographical studies. And man environment relationship is very important theme in geography, and settlement is indicator of that. Elements of culture and history are there in the settlements, and how lands are organized plan and organized, that is the land use planning is in there in settlement geography. Therefore, settlement geography is concerned with study of spatial patterns of human activities. Now, Doxiades, he gave three elements of a settlement, which are the homogeneous parts like house, farm, or population composition, special part like a temple or monument, this is generally one or two only, and the circulation elements, which are transport like a road and rail. So, these elements are very rarely static, therefore, they are dynamic and they keep on changing. Next, we have types of settlements. First type is based on census town or statutory town. A census town has a density greater than 400 persons per square kilometer, population greater than 5,000, and 75% of the male are in non-agricultural activities. A statutory town is called so because it is set so by a law or an institution, for example, a municipality, a cantonment board, or a nagarpalika. Now, comparing rural and urban settlements, the infrastructure here is poor. Here it is very good. Here the main occupation is agriculture and allied sectors. Here we have manufacturing services sectors. Land use is highly unplanned here. It is a planned land use here. The culture is traditional and uniform here. Here it is cosmopolitan and dynamic. High ethnic identity and very poor ethnic identity because of high migration, the diversity will be high in urban areas. Here the traditional construction type with the local materials is built. Here better and modern designs with better materials is used here. Now, based on the compactness, we have village and hamlet. Here number of families living are thousands. Here only 110 to 50. All the families are not related in a village, and they are all related in a hamlet. The most important activity is agriculture. Here it is pastoral activities. Strong social hierarchy is seen in the village, whereas hamlets are not seen in India. Rather, they are seen in Europe and North America. But in India, in some hills and deserts, hamlets can be seen. Now, these are the villages with high population density, and their large hamlets are here and there. So, if number of villages are more than a number of hamlets, it is a compact settlement, and if villages are less than hamlets, it's a dispersed settlement, and if it's in between, it is a semi-compact. So the compact and dispersed comparison, density here it will be high, it will be low, and number of hamlets versus villages, it will be villages will be more, here hamlets will be more. They are large in size, they are small in size, they are concentrated, and these are scattered. So these are generally seen in northern plains, coastal regions, and fertile developments. These are seen in deserts, hills, Antarctic, savanna, and Central Asia. Coming to semi-dispersed, if a compact settlement, because of conflict or population growth, people are moving away from the compact settlement, it can become a semi-dispersed settlement. Or if a dispersed settlement because of road or something, the people are coming and aggregating here, it can become a semi-dispersed settlement. So this is a transition settlement, semi-dispersed. Next, we have patterns of rural settlements. These are three types: rectangular, circular, and amorphous. First, rectangular. These are the most common because they are the most convenient. Because rectangular forms are easy to form, and perpendicular roads give the best accessibility. These are generally seen in UP, Bihar, Indus Plains, and West Bengal. First pattern, we have the checkerboard pattern. We have roads at perpendicular 90 degrees, and we have farms and houses here. So this is the most common one. Next, we have the hollow rectangle. The center area is open one. It is generally a large tank in temple towns of South India, or a grazing land or influential house of the influential person, and settlements are seen around it. Next, we have linear or ribbon settlement around along a road, river, or rail. The settlements expand along one axis. There are three variants of this. The first variant is arrowhead, where there is a confluence of two roads. It is developed in the confluence area. And next, we have there are two roads at a cross junction. We have the settlements here, and if it is star shaped because two main roads, it turns into a complex shape. Next one, the circular. It is seen when there is a congregation towards a water source, or for security concerns, for example, oasis in deserts, or security purposes because of the tribal conflicts. This can be seen in Bundelkhand, Rajasthan region, Malwa, Kutch, etc. So the variants are: first, central hollow around a well. The settlements are seen like this. So the central area would be a well or a lake, oasis, a fort or a grazing land. If the roads converge, also radial pattern or spider web pattern can be seen here. So they are converging at a center or the nebular shape. This is for the security reasons. This will be most secure, but accessibility will be low in this one. So it is generally seen in forts and ancient cities. Next, we have the arc or horseshoe shape. This is generally seen at the spurs of the hill or edge of the lakes. So like this, at the edge of the edge of the lake. So these are seen in Himalayas and central hills. So these are the variants of the rural settlements. Next, we have morphology of settlements. What is morphology? It is the internal structure of a settlement. That is, how is a settlement organized within. So the elements are how is the land use, what is the land use pattern, orientation of the transport network, social segregation on basis of caste, race, religion and class, and architecture, what is the design used and what is the building materials. Factors influencing the morphology, we have site factors or the natural factors like soil, slope, climate, etc. History and culture, proximity to other settlements, connectivity, deliberate planning by government, and land rental. Land rental is dependent on all these factors. So some of the site factors are can be seen from this. In rainier snowy areas we have slant roof, in dry regions we have flat roof, in rainy areas we have veranda, in grasslands we have thatched roof, hills and hard rock areas we have stone houses, in flooded areas we have stilt houses, in warm areas there are taller houses, and in cold areas we have shorter houses. Next, we rural morphology. Single most factor important affecting the rural morphology is the agricultural land use. So this is the main factor. Most it will be the rectangular variants because they are most convenient, and social segregation is very strong in rural morphology because especially the caste and communal segregation. Higher and richer castes generally live in the center of the villages, and lower castes they live in the periphery of the villages. Next, we have the elements of modernity like roads and rails and administrative centers. Next, we have urban morphology. The definition is internal structure of the cities, about land use pattern, transport, architecture, and social segregation. So, rural versus urban morphology, these are more diverse, more dynamic, and more elements of planning involved. Heavy influence of history and culture is seen in India. For example, from the ancient history, we have mandapas, medieval, we have domes and gardens taken, British, we have rails and civilians, and modern planned extensions. So, the history influence is very high on urban morphology. Urban morphology is one of the most studied aspects of the settlement geography, especially in Chicago School in 1920s. Burgess and Parks, they are sociologists who told about the influence of social dynamics through history on urban morphology. That is, social conditions they manipulate the history, and which in turn it takes how the urban morphology is. We have five models in urban morphology, which are concentric zonation model by Burgess and Parks, sectoral model by Hyatt, multiple nuclei model by Harris and Ullman, exploded city model by Watson, and urban realm edge city model by Griffin Ford. So the models of urban morphology, uh, we have the first one, which is a concentric zonation model, which is given by Burgess and Parks. This is one of the very first models. So according to them, a city develops as concentric rings around the CBD. So the two main factors for this is first one is land rental. So distance decay of land rental, as we move away from the CBD, the land rent keeps on decreasing. So people want to move away from the CBD for lower rents, and social and economic process of invasion and displacement. So the migrants are attracted towards the CBD because of the economic reasons. So they start settling down around here. Now rich move away because of more coding. So this is the invasion and displacement, invasion by the migrants and displacement of the rich people. So as we move away from the CBD, the social and economic status keeps on increasing. So this is the model. We have the CBD here. If you have the here we have the transition zone, which have slums and all other shanty towns. Here we have low class dwellings, middle class dwellings, and rich class dwellings. So this is similar to ecological or biological succession, which is seen in ecosystem development. Also, the assumption here is that same accessibility from all sides, but it won't be the same, which will be corrected by the sectoral model, which is the next model we are going to see. So in reality, the city expands disproportionately in some directions, which will be told by the sectoral model. Also, the comparing the CBDs, we have two types: American CBD and Asian or European CBD. So American CBD, it will be dead after office hours. It will be open throughout the late night, and here there won't be any restrictions. People come here, work, and they go back. Here, old and influential people will be living here. Here there will be any factories because of very high rent. Here there will be factories because it was a very old historical and cultural influence. And here there will be high rentals. Here also there will be high rentals. Tall buildings will be more here. There won't be as many tall buildings here. It is a cultural center. It will be dead after the night. It's only a working place. These are highly planned, these are not planned. There is mixed land use here. there is no mixed land use. Here there is mixed land use because of the history and culture, and only high-end retail firms work here. All types of mixed land use is seen here. Same examples are USA, Singapore, Hong Kong and Dubai. It is seen in Paris, London, Delhi and Kolkata. Next we have the sectoral model given by Hoyt. This is a variant of concentric zonation model. So according to him, concentric nature of the city expansion is disrupted because of two reasons, which is economic and social factors, and connectivity factors. First of all, economic and social factors. Similar activities, they stay together. For example, wherever there is a factory, there will be workers nearby. And class and social segregation, rich and poor, they separate. And these are first factor. Second factor is connectivity. So the transport routes also, they disrupt the city's expansion concentric model. So here we can see this is a CBD and it is not perfectly concentric, it is disrupted. This is the wholesale and the light manufacturing. Always the lower class and working class, they live nearby the working places, so they live here. And high class, the people, they move far away because they want big houses and they don't want any crowding. There will be a commuter zone because rent will be very low here, and because of the development of the modern transport systems. Next, we have multiple nuclear model given by Harris and Ullman. So according to them, city expansion is not regular and it won't happen in any particular shape. Related and dependent functions, they attract and agglomerate, and unrelated functions, they repel. For example, heavy engineering units, they come in one place, and light manufacturing units, they go to another place. Also, a single CBD may not be able to serve all the needs of expanding city. Therefore, subsidiary CBDs will pop up. Later, they will specialize and complement the main CBD. For example, in Delhi, Kirtinagar is known for furniture, Nehru Place is for computers, and Sarojini Market is for clothes. Also, two types of segregation can be seen in this model, which is functional segregation, like I said, heavy engineering versus light manufacturing, and social segregation, rich versus poor. So here we have it. One is, this is a CBD, and around this is a wholesale and light manufacturing. Always low class lives near the working place, and the middle class and higher class live here. This is the outlying CBD which is developing recently, and this is the heavy industry manufacturing units, and this is the industrial suburb, and this is a residential suburb. Industrial suburb because it is near to industry, and residential because it is close to residential areas. Next, we have the exploding city model given by the Breford Watson. So according to him also, there is no particular shape for city morphology. City grows around the city core, but the expansion can be of three types, which are urban sprawl, linear or ribbon expansions, and leapfrogging. Urban sprawl is haphazard unplanned growth around the city core. This is city core. Urban sprawl is happening here. Linear or ribbon settlements happen along a transport route. So these are generally planned. And leapfrogging are discrete settlements that pop up around the urban areas because of the low rentals and etc. So this can be of checkerboard sprawl or the leapfrog settlements that can be seen here. Next, we have the urban realm and edge city model. This is popularized by Joel Guru in his Edge Cities Life in Frontiers. So all the four models we have seen, these were mostly given in 1920s. So during those times, transport was very poor and communication was very poor. But in the modern times, due to the motorways expansion and modern transport and ICT improvement, the smaller cities and towns are the main city. They're able to diversify their functions and specialize their functions. Therefore, these cities, they become edge cities. Basically these edge cities, they have their own independent and economic and industrial base. Therefore, they are no longer completely dependent on the main city. So the new urban morphology is no longer about studying the structure of a single city. Rather, it is about studying about the agglomeration with the main city. This is the main city and these are the edge cities. Also, the sphere of influence of the cities should always all be studied it together. All this together will be called as the urban limb. So initially we used to study only about this dot. Now we are studying this complete thing. So this is the new urban morphology. Next, we have the example is initially when there was Delhi, due to the high rent and population people started moving to Gurugram and it developed as a suburb. But later, due to ICT and modern transport, the Gurugram diversified and specialized in its functions, and now it developed its own independent economy. So Delhi and Gurugram are Gurugram now become NCT, and areas in between are the suburbs now. Next, we have the morphology of Indian cities. So traditional morphology models, they don't apply to India because Indian cities are mostly overgrown villages and they have heavy influence of history. For example, mandapas in ancient times, domes and gardens in medieval times, rail civil lines, forts and ports in British times, planned extension in modern times, and also the modern elements in urban planning are planned extensions which can be seen in Noida's grid model, Vashi in Mumbai, Chandigarh, Salt Lake City in Kolkata. Some new elements which are rapidly transforming cities are Examples are metros, malls, and community centers. So these are two reasons. Third reason is segregation is seen in terms of class, caste, race, and communal segregation. Also, CBD of Asian CBD is much different than the American CBD. So this is the example of segregation in Saraspur, UP. So we have Jagis living in the center, Devars living around here, Balmikis are living far away because they are the lowest caste, Chamars living here, Devars and Jagis here, and this is a communal segregation can be seen Muslims living in one area. So there are two models for India, which are bazaar model and port based model. Let's see bazaar model. So this is the main bazaar. It is traditional and cultural center. Here infra is very poor and congestion is very high. Next we have high class residents living here. Old Nawabs used to live. So these are generally the old cities like in Hyderabad, etc. Today these are very much neglected. Now here we have the middle class people who are generally migrants living here, and here lower class people like workers and laborers live. So these A, B, C, and D are these are linguistic and occupational groups. Example can be seen in Karol Bagh, and these are the planned extensions that are happening. Next, we have the port-based model. So this is the port and this is the port's extension. This is a fort to protect the port, and the Maidan acts as the buffer area. So there is the racial segregations in here. Natives live here and English Europeans who are very rich live here. So there is racial segregation in this model. So wealthy bureaucrats and middle class people live here. Anglo Indians live here. There is a club where all people come and join. This is a central business district. We have bazaar here. These are the administrative quarters. So this is a port model. So port is very important for colonial powers because it was the economic fulcrum for them. So fort and Maidan for their security. Examples are Kolkata's Fort William and Chennai's Fort St. George. Next city region, it is also called sphere of influence, or Umland in Germany, or hinterland, or urban field, or catchment area. So these are different names for city region. So as we know, city is not an isolated region, it is a unified region. So what is the main issue is how to identify where the city ends and where the rural landscape starts. We have three methods. First one is using population density and land use pattern. Second is simply using the administrative boundary, and third one is using the consumption pattern, that is demand for goods and services. So first two methods are very easy, but they do not give the correct picture. This method is very difficult, but it gives a better picture of the sphere of influence. So what is sphere of influence? If a person who is living in the rural landscape, he is able to get the services from the urban area, then he is said to be living in the sphere of influence of that city. So consumption pattern is the best thing to identify the sphere of influence, but there are five problems with this using the consumption pattern. First of all, which goods and services to select, and what techniques to demarcate the boundary. Next, the goods and services, they are of dynamic nature. For example, data in 1990s, no one used to consume data. Now the people who consume more data are said to be more urban. Next, we have the in ICT and modern transport, they make the demarcating sphere of influence even more difficult. In ancient times, there was a fort, then there is agriculture fields, then the forest. So it was easy to demarcate, but due to the ICT and modern transport, it is difficult to demarcate. And we have overlapping spheres of influence. First of all, influence follows distance decay law with respect to distance. So as the distance from the city increases, its influence keeps on decreasing. But as we can see, this part has influence of both city A and city B. So how to demarcate this is also a challenge. So actually, why demarcate the city region? First one is utility based, for better administration, for better traffic management and congestion management, and anticipate migration and make amenities for them. Which goods and services to produce and which are in demand, and how to plan land use patterns. And second is academic interest, because the complex techniques are used to in geography to demarcate city regions. So we have two types of methods, qualitative and quantitative. These are descriptive and subjective. These are more objective. These are not standardized. Since they use data and mathematical operations, they are standardized. They do not use any data and mathematical operations. Example is R.L. Singh method, who uses the skyline method. Here proximal boundary method, Tyson polygon, and gravity methods. So first let's see R.L. Singh method. He used this to demarcate city region of Varanasi. First of all, the methods used by him are questionnaire and survey. Using the questionnaire and survey, he gets insights about city, about where Varanasi gets its vegetables, milks and grains, and where Varanasi supplies newspaper, bus service, medicine and education services, and administrative services. So using this survey and questionnaire, he uses the scalar method to it. In it, he calculates range of goods and services for each of the six data. So he draws six irregular polygons for the six data. Next, he superimposes all polygons using a median line. For example, all these are there, so he calculates all them and he calculates the median line to this one. So he similarly does the same thing for each polygon, and then several dots are came, all these dots are connected, and this will be the sphere of influence of the Varanasi. As we can see, Jaunpur, Mirzapur, Ghazipur, and Azampur. All these are within the sphere of influence of Varanasi, and Sasaram is out of the sphere of influence of Varanasi. So goods and services he considers are vegetables and milk, grains, newspaper, bus service, medical and education services, and administrative services. What are the issues with this method? Reliability of the survey, dynamic goods, nature of goods and services, oversimplification of the boundaries. So these are the three issues. Next we have the method of proximal boundaries. Here there are three steps. First we have to plot all the cities of the similar size and hierarchy. So that is the first step. We have A, B, C, D, E, and F. Next, join the main city we want whose sphere of influence we want to demarcate with all the other cities with straight lines. Next, draw the perpendicular bisectors of these lines and join all these points, so that this will be the sphere of influence of the city A. So what is the basic principle behind this is perpendicular bisector is taken as a breaking point of influence of cities of equality. That is, a person living on this side of the perpendicular bisector will go to F for services, and a person on this side will go to the A. So that is the basic principle here. And there are two limitations. First of all, flat surface assumed. For example, if there is a mountain here, person living here won't go to B, rather he would go to A only. And second, the economic competition with other settlement complexes, like if there is another settlement complex here, this is not considered in this method. Next we have Tyson polygon method. This is also very similar to proximal boundary in that it also considers cities of similar hierarchy, and it also uses the perpendicular bisector as the breaking point of influence. But the main difference is that in this method we can plot city regions of two or more cities at one time. Like we can see here, we can plot only for one city. So Tyson polygon method, the steps are first plot the similar cities, that is A, B, C, D, and E, which are of similar size or influence. Next, edge of the map is drawn on the basis of subjective basis, like surveyor, etc. We draw the edge of the map, that is beyond this there won't be any influence of any of these cities. Next, we join all these cities using a straight lines and make a polygon. We draw perpendicular bisectors for each side of the polygon and join them with these perpendicular bisectors are joined to the edge of the map and also the center. So these would be the city regions of each city. So last method we have the gravity method. This is also the statistical method. So there are two theories given here: breaking point theory given by Stewart, and theory of retail trade given by the Rayleigh. So this is basically social physics, that is application of laws of physical sciences to social sciences. In this method we are applying the Newton's laws of gravitation, which is F equal to G into m1 m2 by r square. Here mass is replaced by population and radius is replaced by the distance. So a planet, if there are two planets and there is a body here, the force exerted by these two planets would be equal. Similarly, there are two cities with population P and PB. The influence exerted by both these cities would be similar here. So to get the distance, we use this formula, that is d by 1 plus root over pa by pb. This at this point the influence would be same. So person living on here would go here and person living here would go here. So Stewart's breaking point theory, it uses population size to measure the attractiveness of city. But the issue is that if you are comparing a small city and huge village, the population of the village will be higher, but obviously this is more urban. So that is the problem. To fix that, Riley gave his theory of the retail trade, where he considers size of retail trade as measure of attractiveness rather than the population size. So next we have rural urban fringe. The concept was given by R.J. Pryor in 1968. So city influence does not end abruptly. That is, city does not end abruptly and rural area starts here. There is a gradation of landscape with respect to land use patterns and ways of life. This is called as the rural urban continuum. So what is a rural urban fringe? It is the area of transition between well recognized urban land use and area devoted to agriculture. So what are some of the characteristics of RUF? These are extensive land use, like use for airport and farmhouse. Rural administration still under rural areas only, and rural influence still dominates, but there is integration with urban economy. Poor infrastructure because areas of urban neglect. Land price speculation will be there because of real estate developers. High social distance between rich and poor, and haphazard growth, but there will be some planning with respect to hospitals and colleges. RP Mishra gave 5 stages in development of RUF, which are: first one is the rural landscape with traditional society. Next, there is a changing cropping pattern with veggies, dairies, flowers dominating the agricultural crops. Then we have the change in occupation. People go pick up seasonal jobs in urban, mostly blue collar jobs like drivers. Then there will be change in land use pattern with extensive land use for airport, farmers, etc. Therefore, there will be fall in agricultural land. Therefore, there will be more unemployment, more conflict, and more crime. Then the land will change from rural to our suburbs. Example, dormitory town. So we have the urban areas here, inner fringe here, outer fringe here, urban shadow here, and commuting zone here. Some dormitory towns are here, and there is a commuting town here. So the four main problems of RUF are these: are the garbage and sewage dumps of the city, black money will be parked in the real estate, land ownership will be concentrated, and due to this land price will go up. Jogi Jodhi, that is slums really related to RUF because of the low land cost compared to the main city. Next, we have the urban agglomerations. There are four origins for the explaining urban areas, which are ecological, economic, and cultural and administrative. Administrative, like fort and capital. Cultural, like these are the centers of the cultural exchanges. Ecological, the next logical step in the trading the agricultural surplus is a city, and we have the economic expansion. So the actual expansion of the area is called the RUF, that is urban expanding into rural. This actual area is called as the RUF, and the phenomenon is called as the urban sprawl, which will generally be unplanned. Then we have the challenges of the unplanned extensions. First one, there will be high pollution because industry will be high in these areas. High inequality will lead to high crime. Pressure on infrastructure like narrow roads and high traffic. Land cost will be high because of the speculation. Traffic will be high. Crowding will be high. Agricultural land will fall down. Therefore, unemployment will increase. Therefore, more conflict and also slums will result, and this will result in low standards of living. Unsustainable infra development will be there here. So what is the solution? First of all, urban sprawl phenomenon is inevitable. Therefore, we have to make it planned and gradual and slow. Therefore, these urban sprawls will turn into the planned extensions in terms of suburban towns and suburb villages. We integrate all of them together into well planned urban agglomeration. This is the solution to the unplanned expansions problems. Next, we have types of towns and cities. First one is a dormitory town. These were parts of suburbs. They may be planned or unplanned. They do not have own economy or industrial base. So these are basically residential commuter towns. People go to the urban areas, they work and they come back to their homes. So what is the reason for the popping up are because of the low rent in these areas and low cost of living compared to the main city. Next, we have the edge cities. We have seen this already in the urban limbs in the models of urban morphology. This was given by Joel Garu in his Edge Cities in New Frontiers. So this was a dormitory. This was a dormitory town once, but they do not have any own economy. They have a small industrial base to generate some employment. Because they have a small industrial base, not all of them are only residents, but also they may be workers here. Next, we have twin cities. These are the cities with a similar population or similar influence. So examples are Cuttack, Bhubaneswar, Indore, Ujjain, Bokaro, and Dhanbad. Next, we have satellite towns. These are not part of the suburbs or RUF. They have their own historical legacy. For example, Noida is not a satellite town because it does not have any historical legacy. They have their own industrial base, so they have their own employment generation, and they are far from the main city. Theoretically, they are independent of the main city. For example, around Delhi, we have Sonipat, Panipat, Karnal, and Ghaziabad. So satellite town, they can reduce the population pressure and infra stress on the main city. Therefore, if government further develop the satellite towns, they will add to the industrial base of the country. So comparing suburbs and satellite towns, these are part of roof. These are not the part of roof. They don't have the own industrial base. They have the industrial base. They do not have historical legacy. They do have it. They are close to the main city. They are far away from the main city. Next, we have urban agglomeration. We have to define it first. It is the large concentrations of the urban areas with increasing population density and increasing commercialization of activity. Therefore, they attract migrants and expand over large areas, leading to the problems of amenities if they are not well planned. So there can be of two types: metropolis and megapolis. If 1 million population or 5 million population. Next, Lewis Mumford, he gave negative interpretation of stages of development of a city. So he gave 6 stages, which are: first one is the polis, which is the origin of settlement. Next, we have Geopolis, which is a small town or a village, and then you have Metropolis, which is a modern city. This stage has the best quality of life. Next, we have Megapolis with crowding, materialism, and corruption. Next, Terranopolis with crowding turning into congestion, materialism turning into consumerism, and corruption turning into crime. So this will be very bad situation. Next, last, we have Necropolis, which is a dead city. So this is a negative interpretation. It can be used to point out the problems of urbanization in UPSC answers. Next, we have Gene Goldman, which he gave the positive interpretation of development of stages of city. So as city expands and population increases, they will expand in area and better transport will be provided. Because of these two things, there will be better employment and better amenities, finally resulting better quality of life. This can be used as way forward in UPSC answers for urbanization problems. So next, we have the conurbation, which is continuous urbanization. So for example, there's a urban main city here, satellite town, satellite 2, and there are dormitory towns and 8 cities here. They're all urban areas. There are no rural areas in between. This is the most important point in the conurbation. There are no rural areas in between. So this is a ribbon expansion along a major transport or the linear economic expansion. So Patrick Geddes in 1915, he defined it as extensive urban areas resulting from coalescence of several original separate nuclei. Urban nuclei, that is, there are several main city, their influence grow up, and this way the conurbation is formed. Next, C.B. Fawcett, he defined this as area occupied by continuous resort dwellings, factories, harbors, etc., not separated by the rural land. So this is the definition. Basically, there should not be any rural land in between. They can be developed through three types. First one is uninuclear. The growth is expanding from one side, binuclear from two sides, and polynuclear from many sides. So these are three types. So we can give three examples. There are none in India, but two are prospective in northwestern Kolkata, which can be seen here. This is a northwestern prospective conurbation in India. Delhi, we have Amritsar, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Ambala, Kurukshetra, Karnal, Panipat, Sonipat. We have Delhi now. Then Gurgaon. Here we have Chandigarh. Here we have Saharanpur, Dehradun, Haridwar, Muzaffarnagar, Meerut. This side we have Noida, Faridabad, and finally Mathura and Agra. In Kolkata, along the Hooghly River, we have Chandan Nagar, Nahiti, Angur, Shamnagar, Mahesh, Tiragar, Belur, Sodepur, Agarpura, Saika, Haura, Manikpur, and Bujabujje. So these are the prospective conurbations. With proper development in future, they may turn into the conurbations of India. Now coming to the world conurbations, we have the Golden Horseshoe conurbation in Canada. China says model, there is a conurbation on Pacific coast, and most important one is the Bowas conurbation of USA. We have the Portland, Boston, New Haven, New York, Washington DC, Richmond, and Columbus. Next, Randstad Holland conurbation in Netherlands. It has Amsterdam, Utrecht, Dordrecht, Rotterdam, The Hague, Leiden, and Haarlem. So there were two challenges basically: disappearance of green belts and increasing commutation. This was solved by using the increasing living space via high-rise buildings and construction of the freight corridors. So this is all the problem here. Last thing is the metropolitan areas, which are large urban areas deemed as urban agglomerations, but these are not continuous in the urban build-up area. So this is the main difference with the conurbation. There may be rural areas in between. So in India, we have the four primary metropolitan cities, which are Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata. This is the Delhi metropolitan area. This is the Mumbai metropolitan area. This is the Chennai metropolitan area. This is the Kolkata metropolitan area. Within Delhi, we have the Jaipur area here and Lucknow area here. In the Mumbai one, we have Ahmedabad area here, Nagpur area here, Pune area here. In the here, we have Hyderabad area here and Bangalore area here. So these are the metropolitan areas of the India. So classification of settlements. What is the need for classification? To understand the nature of settlement, for example, it may be a dormitory town. To understand the nature, we need to classify. Next, anticipate the problems. There will be many problems, for example, in RUF. To understand the evolution of settlements, for example, 6 stages of the Lewis Mumford. And for comparative approach, for example, using the rank size rule, primate city, and CPT. So first type of classification is between rural and urban. Here infra will be poor, here it will be better. Agricultural related, manufacturing services, it will be planned, traditional and uniform culture, cosmopolitan and dynamic culture, high ethnic identity because of migration, high diversity, therefore low ethnic identity, traditional materials with the local traditional designs with the local building materials, better designs with modern building materials. Next, we have census turn and stature turn. Here, density is more than 500, population greater than 5,000, more than 75% male in non-agricultural activities. These are defined by laws of the institutions. Next, we have the UN classification. Class 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 or the rural areas. This is less than 5,000. This is 5,000 to 10,000, 10 to 20,000, 20 to 50,000, 50,000 to 1 lakh. But population size does not represent the nature of the settlement. For example, many villages and UP have huge populations, but they are not urban. Subjective classification of settlements. There are three schemes here. First one is the Houston scheme. He gave nuclear settlements, formative settlements, and mature settlements. Nuclear settlements are basically 4 cities in ancient times with a defined boundary, small and centered around a small location. Next, we have the formative settlements. These are urban sprawls with improving transport and ICT, high industrialization. So these are an expansion stage. Most of the Indian cities are in this stage. Next, we have mature settlements. These are modern cities, for example, European cities with high infrastructure and high quality of life. Next, Griffith Taylor, he is very similar to Houston. Infantile is similar to nuclear, juvenile is similar to formative, and mature are similar to mature settlement. Extra, he gave senior settlement, which are example is Fatehpur Sikri. Next, we have Louis Mumford. We have already seen this. Eopolis, Polis, Metropolis, Megapolis, Steranopolis, and Necropolis. This is dead city. Here will be crime, corruption. Here will be crowding and materialism. This has the best quality of life. This is original settlement. This is a small town. Next, we have the functional classification of settlements. Houston, Taylor, and Mumford. Their classification is extremely subjective and no data to back it. But functional classification, they will use two criteria, which are nature of economic activities and types of functions performed. First, we have Arosio scheme. For him, the criteria is the dominant function. So, based on the dominant function, he identifies 6 types of towns: administrative towns, defense towns, cultural towns, recreational towns, manufacturing towns, and transport towns. Examples of administrative towns are Brasilia, Islamabad, and Gandhinagar. Defense towns are Ambala, Jabalpur, and Edinburgh. Cultural towns are Mathura, Varanasi, and St. Petersburg. Recreational towns are Ooty and Las Vegas. Manufacturing towns are Bokaro, Coimbatore, and Pittsburgh. Transport towns are Kanpur, Frankfurt, and Guna. So the criticism is that lack of objectivity in terms of choosing the dominant function, and also one city can perform more than one functions. Next, C.D. Harris scheme. He gave this in his book Functional Classification of Cities in 1940. So he studied more than 900 cities, and he used two types of data: occupational data from informal service sources and employment data from formal sources. So on basis of this, he identified 9 functions, which are core manufacturing, specialized manufacturing, retail, wholesale, transport, education, mining, diversified, and others. So these two, on basis of this, he gave 4 groups, which are manufacturing, which consists these two, retail consists retail, wholesale consists wholesale. All these are grouped into services. So if more than 74% of workers are in this group, it is called M1 type or specialized manufacturing. If more than 45%, it is called M type or core manufacturing. If 50% in retail services, it's called retail town. 80% in wholesale services, it's called a wholesale town. It is called a diversified town if less than 60% manufacturers in manufacturing, less than 20% in wholesale, and less than 50% in retail. So all these boxes are ticked, it's called as a diversified town. So what is the limitation? So what is the basis for criteria? This 60%, 20% is not explained, so therefore there is subjective involved here. In exam, if asked about Duncan classification, write C.D. Harris. Next, we have the Nelson scheme. So two main concepts he also uses are dominant function and intercity comparison. So he uses a mathematical method of standard deviation function. So he applies a statistical analysis of the entire settlement system, so not just one city like the C.D. Harris. So on basis of this, he identifies 9 types of functions and therefore 9 types of terms, which are manufacturing, retail, professional, wholesale, administrative, transport and communication, finance, insurance, real estate, and mining and personal services. For example, spas. Last, we have Ashok Mitra scheme, who gave his scheme on basis of 1961-1971 data census. So on basis of this, he identifies 9 functions and 3 categories. First one is the cultivators and agricultural labor. It is not clubbed into any category. Next, we have mining, forestry, and plantation workers, manufacturing workers, household industry and construction turned into manufacturing, trade and commerce, transport and communication into trade and transport, and other services as services. So on basis of this, he makes a triangular plot for intercity comparison. So on this plot, if someone is at the vertices, so that is a manufacturing town, it is a service town, it is a trade and transport town. But if it is on the other side of this, it is not a manufacturing town, so it is 0% manufacturing. And if it's in between, it can perform all the functions. So the more it is in between, it will be a more diversified function. So he gave 4 categories on this, so which are highly diversified town if less than 40%, moderately balanced city if it is 40 to 45%, specialized city if it's 45 to 50%, highly specialized city is greater than 50%. So we can see here, this is diversification will be more here, it will be more specialized going away from here. Next, we have models of settlement hierarchy. There are 3 ways to study settlement: how a settlement develops and agglomerates. For example, what are the side factors, cultural factors involving. We have studied roof conurbation, urban agglomeration. Second is how a settlement looks from inside, which is urban morphology. We have seen this already. Third is how does the settlement relate with other settlements, which are classification, which we have seen already. Hierarchy we will see now. So morphology is city as a region, and classification and hierarchy is city in a region. So city as a region is how is the city inside, and this city in India, how many cities are there and how do they relate with each other. So hierarchy, we have a village at the lowest level, town, city, and the capital at the top level. But in reality, it will be like this: village, town, city, and there will be many top cities here. If there is high inequality, the height will increase. So why does the hierarchy exist? Because in terms of population size, there will be difference, functions performed, and relative importance of the cities. So there are 3 models we will study, which are primate city given by the Mark Jefferson in 1939, rank size rule given by Ziff in 1940s, and CPT given by Crystal in 1933. First, we will see primate city concept. This was given by Mark Jefferson in 1939. So according to him, in a settlement complex, there is a single city called primate city, which is disproportionately large, and it will excessively express the country's culture, economy, and capacity. For example, London for UK, Sao Paulo for Brazil, Paris for France, and Mexico City for Mexico. So Mark Jefferson, he studied 51 cities, and he found that 46 of them had primate cities, with 28 of them being twice as large as second largest, and 18 of them being thrice as largest as second largest city. Countries with no primate cities were India, Canada, and Australia. But we must note that he is comparing population size only, so he's not comparing functions or economy. And also, he did not explain why this is happening. This was later provided by Linsky and Gunnar Myrdal. So first, let's see Linsky's explanation. So according to him, the features of the country with primate cities are small territory, agricultural base, low per capita income, high population growth, and formal colonial status. These correlate with the least developing countries and developing countries, but this primacy is also seen in developed countries like UK, France, and Russia. So to offer explanation to Russia and Brazil, we can say that because most of the Russia, like Siberia, is not in not habitable, and Amazon is in Brazil is not habitable, they have the primacy. Next, we have the cumulative causation theory by Gunnar Myrdal. So according to him, primate is a symbol of inequality. So he explains this through this vicious cycle. For example, a city has certain advantage. Because of that advantage, it grows disproportionately with respect to other regions, and because of this, it accumulates labor, technology, investment, etc., and it further grows. Therefore, its advantage further increases and it further grows, and this vicious cycle keeps on continuing. Therefore, it is a symbol of inequality. For example, Hyderabad in Telangana is a island of development. Only Hyderabad is developed, rest area is not developed. So this is seen in India at state level. But small countries, on the other hand, one city can meet all the economic and infra needs. So if there are two or more primate cities, it will be duplication. For example, Tel Aviv in Israel and Colombo in Sri Lanka. We must use Gunnar Myrdal to show disability of the primate city. For example, large city, it is a symbol of inequality, therefore it is bad, and a small country, it is a symbol of efficiency, therefore it is good. Now, application to India, it doesn't apply at national level because of large territory, high diversity, and population is huge and fairly dispersed. And former four British presidencies developed into four mega cities. But this can be applied at state level because 15 states exhibit primacy, which can be explained by the Gunnar Myrdal cumulative causation model we have seen already. Next, we have the rank size rule. This was actually observed by Auerbach, but mathematical formula was given by Ziff in 1940s. So, what is the difference between primate city and rank size rule? Is that primate city compares only first and second, whereas rank size rule compares all cities in the settlement complex. So, he also uses the criteria of the population size. The method he uses are both empirical studies and use of mathematical concepts. So, the formula is gives as a Pn is directly proportional to 1/n of P1. Therefore, population of nth largest city is 1/n of the largest city, that is second largest city is half of the largest city. So if you plot the same on the graph, we get this hyperbolic curve which is like this. So but in a hyperbolic curve, it is very difficult to understand what is the difference. So if you apply the log function and give the straight line, we can easily compare this. So these observations were confirmed in US by Peter Haggett and Barry Horton in 1940s and 60s. So, but in real life, deviations do occur. If there is a binary deviation, for example, twin cities, it will go like this. And if there is primacy, that is one city is extremely disproportionately large, then it will go like this. So it will sag and it will bulge out. And this is the ideal rank size rule. So why does this happen is because of forces of unification and forces of diversification. Forces of unification are urban settlements, they are competitive, so they can't coexist, though therefore settlements they come and coalesce and form and large cities which will be very few and dispersed, whereas rural areas they are self-contained and they do not have much interaction with the surroundings. Therefore many villages and towns they are many and they can coexist. This can be seen in India that four mega cities are the four corners, which are Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata. So does this rule apply to India? No, it does not apply, not even state level. Only exception is that it can apply to Rajasthan to some extent. Next, we have central place theory. This was given by Walter Christaller in 1933. So to give this, he studied the patterns of settlement in South Bavaria in Germany, and studying that he gave the CPT. So let's compare primate city and size rule and CPT. So the criteria here is population size. Here he used the criteria of functional hierarchy, which is role and importance of the city. This is a descriptive model. It just tells us what exists and not how to plan. This is a prescriptive model. It gives the ideal pattern of settlement with respect to the least cost and travel. So these are not special models, so these are not considered whether the city is here, all the cities are here, there are no cities here. It does not consider all that. Here this is a location theory, so it is a part of thread which we'll see now. So there are some of the assumptions of the location theories. Basically, study of location patterns is an important theme in geography, which is why it is also called as a science of spatial analysis. Second, quantitative relation, it inspired the use of quantitative geometric analysis in studying the patterns of settlements. So these two things inspired the CPT. Also the location triad, which are Van Thunen's agricultural location theory, which was given in 1826, and Alfred Weber's industrial location theory, which was given in 1920. These two also inspired Walter Christaller CPT, which was given in 1933. So these thing and these two things inspired him to give the CPT. So what are the challenges? Main challenge of these location theories is how to standardize and quantify human activity. The solution offered by them is to reduce subjectivity by using the simplifying ideal assumptions. So let's see these assumptions. First one is the isotropic surface. The surface is flat, featureless, uniform, and monotonous. Therefore, same physical conditions exist everywhere. Second, the man is economic. He is an economic man. So only economic factors influence him. He does not have any emotional bias or cultural choices. Therefore, his judgment is value free. Next, he is a rational man. That is, he has access to all the info and he can process all that info also. Next, perfect competition conditions exist. That is, there will be fixed price and no discounts will be offered for price manipulation. No unfair trade practice will be there, and supply exactly balances the demand. This is why all these assumptions are called normative assumptions, and the target is profit maximization. Therefore, the theories are also called as least cost theories. Now coming to the objective of our study, it is to establish cost efficient location pattern of settlements with respect to how many number of settlements and what should be the spacing between them and how many levels of hierarchy should be there and number of settlements in each hierarchy. So we need to first know some concepts in CPT, which are the first one is the central place. It is any settlement in terms of goods and service offered. So it can be any settlement and it is plotted using a single dimensionless dot. Next, we have the central place function. This is the highest hierarchy of goods and services offered at the central place. For example, Mumbai can have a central place function like port, Bombay Stock Exchange, or Antilla. Therefore, each settlement has its own central place function, and this decides the hierarchy of central place function. Hierarchy of central place function decides the hierarchy of the settlement. Next, we have the complementary area. This is the area of influence of the central place. For example, you want a sandwich and you are living here, you won't go to the central place because you are far away from the range, whereas this if you are living here, you can go here. So this is the range of the central place. This is similar to the sphere of influence we have seen already. It is circular because the surface is isotropic. So distance decay operates in this complementary area concept. Next, we have range of service and goods. This is the maximum distance a person is willing to travel to get the goods and services. That is, if you want a sandwich, you won't be going to this bakery, you will go to some other bakery. If you are here, you will go to this bakery. Next, ratio population is the minimum amount of population, minimum number of beds needed for the CBF central place function to exist. That is, suppose this bakery requires minimum 300 bites to come every day. It is the threshold population of the bakery. If there are only 200 people coming there, it won't be able to survive. Next, to attain the cost efficiency, what should we do? First of all, the customer wants maximum number of CPs because he wants the best service, and seller wants the minimum number of CPs because he wants to reduce his cost. But this will lead to duplication and this will lead to monopoly. CPT want to prevent both and provide optimal number of central places. So for this, first the radius of complementary area must be equal to range of goods and services. If range is more than the complementary range is more than the radius of complementary area, demand will be more than supply, and if it is less, demand will be less than supply. And second, the population of the complementary area must be equal to the threshold population. For example, if threshold is 15 and there are only 10 people there, supply will be more, and there are 20 people, supply will be less. Next, if we consider circular complementary areas, this will be left out area, and if they are overlapping, this will be area of duplication. Therefore, circular complementary areas will be only applicable if there is only one single CP, or else we will use regular hexagonal shapes. So this is the honeycomb structure, which is the best shape for this. So what are the conclusions of CPT model? It is based on the empirical studies of South Bavaria and Germany. So 7 hierarchical levels is the most efficient one. It considers only three functions, which are marketing and retail, transport and administration. So for these three, there are three different settlement patterns are given. What are the limitation? It does not consider manufacturing function, which is very important function. Also, it does not differentiate different types of marketing, administration or transport functions. First, let's see marketing function. For this, lower order central places must be at vertices of hexagon of the higher order central place. So how to draw this in exam? First, draw the three black hexagons. Second, draw the lower order CPs at the vertices. Then draw the hexagon in the middle. Then draw six hexagons sharing here. So if you see this small hexagon is being shared by three hexagons. Therefore, 6 times a by 3 plus this one single hexagon is a. Therefore, a equal to 3a. Therefore, a by a, that is k value, will be 3. Therefore, one higher order central place will serve three smaller central places for the marketing function. Next, we have the transport function. For this, lower order central place must be at midpoint of the higher central places hexagon. Therefore, first draw three hexagons side by side. Then put the point in midpoint and draw the hexagon shared by these two. Draw the hexagon in center and complete the hexagon figure. Here we have the one single one in the middle and six of them sharing half of their areas. Therefore, the k value will be 4. Therefore, one higher order central place will serve 4 small central places. Next, we have administrative function. Here, the most important thing is lower order central place should not be shared by 2. Therefore, this should not overlap with the second hexagon. Therefore, k is equal to 7 is the most efficient one, like said by the Christaller. So, analysis of CPT model, it is a location theory, it is a normative theory, it is a least cost theory, and the concepts are interesting. But ideal conditions, assumptions, they do not actually happen in real life. But these set standards for the real life planning. For example, these are used in polders in Netherlands and fence in Britain. The criticism is that it uses only three functions which are very low, and also it ignores manufacturing function, which is very important. So is this model applicable in India? It is applicable in general. For example, for administrative function, we have national capital, state capital, district headquarters, tahsil, block and gram panchayat. Therefore, we have 6 levels, which is very close to 7 of the CPT. But it does not apply at the state level or district level, because India has 29 states or 28 states, and for example, Telangana has 26 districts. So this won't apply in the second level of hierarchy. And marketing principle, the distance between central places must be root 3, which is 1.732. In India, it is 1.4 to 1.8, which is very close. But these both can be considered as a coincidence rather than because of the deliberate planning. Next, some modifications by the August Lodge, who gave it in 1940s. So again, this is also a location theory, but this is relatively less normative, and the concepts are very much similar to Christaller. So what is the difference between CPT is that for him, profit maximization and economic efficiency, he uses the principle of revenue maximization rather than least cost alone, which is used by CPT. So for him, if there is a reduction of demand, we should reduce prices, therefore the sales will increase, and therefore revenue will increase. So he is using the revenue maximization concept. Also, this is a Fordist model, therefore he will apply the principles of economies of scale. Therefore, he will consider the agglomeration effects, and he also includes manufacturing functions also. Actually, he gives 150k values, so he is very diverse, and also he extends the concept of agglomeration to specialized services also. Next, he does not follow the perfect competition condition set by the Christaller. He ignores the role of monopoly. Also, he considers 150k values, therefore he has much more diversity, and also this model is more practical and more closer to reality. So for him, landscape will have sectors of specialization and agglomeration. So these blue ones, there will be 12 sectors with 6 blue and 6 red sectors. So blue ones are very rich with agglomerations, and poor ones are with the lower order CPs. So there will be agglomerations and production changes going on here, and there will be lower order CPs. Next, problems of urbanization. Why do problems of urbanization arise? It is because of urbanization at unsustainable pace plus poor urban planning is both in combination will result to problems of urbanization. So why does urbanization happen at unsustainable pace? This is because to understand this, we must understand how urban areas emerge. This is because we have seen this already. Some centers grow disproportionately because of historical reasons like Kolkata, and natural advantages like favorable climate in Bangalore, and growth poles which are deliberate imbalanced growth. So this is how urban areas emerge, and these cities keep on expanding because Growth poles act as islands of development, for example, Hyderabad, and this can be expressed in using Gunnar Myrdal's cumulative causation theory. Also, immigration, which can be explained by Ravenston's laws. For example, this will lead to a diffusion of innovation and economic growth. City serves as some important functions. For example, tertiary healthcare can only be found in cities, so this will act least push pull law can be applied here. Lack of avenues in rulers, which can be explained using such as expectation and perception of the destination areas. Better standard of living in urban areas, which can be explained using Zelensky's mobility transition theory and stages of development. So this all can be seen in the example in Uttarakhand, where hilly villages with poor agricultural avenues are undergoing unsustainable migration to Haldwani. This will lead to the urban sprawl. So the pace of urbanization, according to UN World Population Projection in India, in 1950 it was 30%. In 2018 it was 55%. 2030 it will be 60%, and by 2070 70% people will be living in the urban areas. Therefore, it is a very steep growth. Also, 70 million people will migrate to cities per year. So what are some of the problems with the urban sprawl? First one is the unsustainable infrastructure. The population growth is unsustainable, and the existing infra already pressurized, it will be even more higher. This will lead to city growing into sprawls, which will develop unsustainable infrastructure. For example, illegal housing, encroachments, and high-rise buildings. This will lead to concretization and leads to urban floods. For example, in Chennai. Next, we have the exploding population. This will lead to traffic congestion, health and sanitation issues, administrative problems like policing. Inequality will increase, and therefore crime will increase. We can link this with Louis Mumford Tirana police. And next we have the poor regional planning. Because of not inclusive or not participatory regional planning, regional developmental imbalance will happen, which will result in growth poles acting as the islands of development. This will result in unsustainable migration to those growth poles. Next, we have waste management problems like e-waste, plastic waste, chemical waste, industrial waste, household waste, and hazardous waste. Plus, improper implementation of waste management rules will lead to issues like pollution of water bodies like Yamuna and lakes in cities. For example, in Bangalore. Next, we have development of popping up of slums, squatters, and ghettos. Squatters are illegal occupations later made their own. For example, Dharavi. Ghettos are legal occupations by marginalized communities. For example, Northeast people living in Delhi in some ghettos. All of these have miserable conditions. Therefore, inequality will be high and crime will be higher. This will lead to policing and administrative problems. So let's see some problems across the world. For Asian countries, it is a problem of environmental hazards increasing, and in Africa, it is due to climate change displacement. In Brazil and South America, we have the sprawl problems, and in New York, we have the sea level rise problems. So for Asian cities, environmental hazards due to extreme heat events, climate change, and natural disasters are there. For Africa, according to UN Habitat report, 200 million Africans will be displaced by 2050 because of climate change. In the US, sprawl is increasing. New York City, because of even if 1 meter sea level rise will be there, it will inundate most of the coast and critical infrastructure. So ecological cost already exists in most of these cities. For example, concretization, loss of green space, pollution, air, water, and land pollution, waste management. All this will lead to more and more climate change, which will increase in more extreme events like heat waves and cyclones. This will further increase the ecological cost. This will further increase the climate change, and this will be a vicious cycle. Therefore, this gives a positive feedback. Now let's do a case study of the Rio de Janeiro, which has a sprawl problem with very high rate. This sprawl will lead to congestion, crime, land price increase, and waste management. Also, car ownership has gone up because of which CBD is further congested, and less than 2% of waste generated is recycled. So this is the case study of Rio de Janeiro. Then we have some of the solutions. First one is the smart urban transport solution system. This will lead to like a use of renewable energy like e-vehicles, smart traffic management, and pollution reduction like implementing BS6, etc. Next, we have decentralized solutions like satellite towns. For example, if you develop Noida and Gurugram more and more, the pressure on Delhi will decrease. Therefore, we must develop tier 2 and tier 3 cities so that they can attract the population and improve the infra in those areas. Next, we should control migration from the rural areas by improving the rural development. Therefore, providing employment in rural areas it does. For especially agricultural development must be done here. Next, a rural scheme that is providing urban amenities in the rural areas should be seriously looked into. Next, we have the city region planning. That is the administrative boundaries and sphere of influence of the cities. They must coincide so that we can plan ahead for the rural urban fringe. So this can also lead to estimation of the migrants. So this is very important. Next we have the centralization solutions, that is redevelopment of, these are the decentralized solutions and these will be the centralized solutions, that is redevelopment of the central business district to address the congestion, for example rebuilding the Chandni Chowk. Also redevelop the green belts, for example which was done in the Randstad conurbation to by increasing the living space. We can also see the case study of green belts in UK, where every urban area is surrounded by the green belt, like West Yorkshire, York, Merseyside, Nottingham, Bristol, Oxford and Cambridge. So because of these green belts around the urban areas, it will lead to containment of urban areas. Therefore there won't be any outward development of the cities or coalescence with the neighboring cities, like Bristol and Oxford, they own coalescence, and no sprawl will develop in these RUF regions. Therefore it will lead to less congestion and less pollution, urban floods will be lower. And another thing we can look into is spawn city concept by China and garden city concept with the Singapore. Spawn city is basically letting the drainage system of the city be the way it is and develop the green spaces, let the rainwater infiltrate into the city. Therefore this is spawn city concept of the China. Next let's see urban planning. First we have the historical precedents, which is in the ancient times there was almost no planning. Exception was IVC, which was planned in the medieval periods. The focus was on beautification, for example forts and gardens. In the British times it was about managing layouts like civil lines and central vista, but it ignored the central parts of the city. So all these areas it was focused on the physical planning, because no resource constraints, no environmental issues, narrow development concept and focus on grandeur. But in the modern times there is need for social planning, because for resource there is a limits to the growth. For environmental issues, because of climate change, more and more disasters happening, therefore Sendai framework must be included. And narrow development concept is now turned into inclusive development concept, and instead of grandeur we must focus on sustainable development goals. Next we have the elements of urban planning, which are physical planning, for example land use patterns; social planning like addressing poverty conflict; planning for neighborhood like development of suburbs, RUF, greenbelt, etc. Slum clearance, therefore provide affordable housing; land zonation, there like demarcating green belts and coastal regulation zones. Uh, Addressing traffic and congestion via public transport, green mobility; waste management by treating the sewage and industrial waste; and disaster resilient by following Sendai framework. Next, some contemporary concepts in urban planning. We have the urban sustainability concept, which must be sustainable environmentally, economically, and energy sustainability. This will lead to urban areas being able to grow and develop and serve the generations after generations. Next, the city must be disaster resilient. So follow the Sendai framework, build back better. Also, because of climate change, the disasters will keep on increasing. Next, economic resilience. The economy should be diversified. Therefore, there must be multifunctional towns rather than monofunctional towns. The city should have ability to innovate and change, and also robust institutions must be there in the city, like bankings and urban local bodies. Next, it should be a clean city, that is waste and pollution management. Cities carrying capacity must be respected, and also it must promote circular economy, that is recycling. Next, we have the smart city, which is we should use the ICT, for example smart city scheme. Participative decision making must be there, for example Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and quality of life must be there, for example ease of living index. Next, we have models of urban planning, where there are two old models, which are garden city model and grid-based planning, and new models are urban clustering and transit-oriented model. Let's see the garden city model. This was given by a British person named Howard Ebenezer in 1898. So he wanted to solve urban pollution and urban poverty. For this, he wanted to create an urban forest where there will be community life in the rural belts, and plan towns for the commercial land use. So this will be commercial area, and this will be the residential for urban forest. So this was implemented in England in Letchworth, Welwyn, and Stockfield. So next we have the grid-based planning, which was the American concept. It has perpendicular streets, therefore the sectors will be self-contained. For example, this is the hospital sector; it will be self-contained in this area itself. So if we want to plan another hospital, we have to go here. So this will have two types of segregation, that is residential and commercial. So this will be residential area and this will be commercial area. This can be seen in Chandigarh. Next, we have the new urbanization, that is this model of sustainable urbanism. This will focus on building social and cultural elements like community centers, heritage centers, community living, focus on community living, ethnic diversity increasing, and cultural tourism. Also, it will focus on increasing walkability, the which will reduce the traffic and congestion and reduce the pollution and increase the standard of living. Also, it considers population as a social capital. So for this there are two options. One is urban clustering model and transit oriented model. We'll see them. So first, urban clustering model. This was given by Jane Jacob. So for him, he wanted a multifunctional landscape and to expand the green belt. So to get these both, the solution offered by him was a vertical development. Therefore, this will be the vertical development. It will be multifunctional landscape because mall, office, school, etc. All of them will be in a single complex, and because of this, there will be more space freed, which will be used as a green belt. And because of the high-rise buildings, there will be more walkability and less congestion. Next, we have the transit-oriented development, which is also called as the TOD model. So, according to this model, all development, either commercial or housing, must be done within 500 meters of the major transport corridors like road, rail. Within 500 meters, all the development must be done, and the rest of the area should be left open. So, because of the clustering, walkability will increase and congestion will decrease, and because of the open spaces like parks and forests, pollution will come down. So, for example, let's take the case study of Singapore. They had challenges like resource constraints, population density, sea level rising, and changing demography. So, the solutions offered by them were water treatment plants, renewable energy, air quality monitoring, massive rapid transport system, green buildings, and circular economy promotion. So, National Urban Policy Framework, it gives 10 sutras. First, cities as engine of human capital. For example, Boston and New York cities, they have great universities. Also, sense of place, that is, a person must relate to city. This can be done by increasing his social life and community gatherings. There should not be static master plans, rather there should be evolving ecosystems. For example, Nagpur Petro and Metro and mixed use clustering in Singapore. Cities must be built for density, that is, they must be able to accommodate more and more people, and public places should have be improved so that there is much social interaction. Because of social interaction, we can improve trust or mutual trust, and social capital will increase and reciprocity will increase. For example, Varanasi Ghats, city should be financially resilient. There should be multimodal transport capacity. There should be clear and unified leadership. For this, we need to solve the problems of funds, functions, and functionary problems of urban local bodies. It should be environmentally sustainable, and city should act as center of regional development, that is the growth pole. Next, according to Sustainable Development Goal 11, the cities we must have sustainable cities and communities, which must be inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So some of the things given in that are affordable housing, public transport, attention to vulnerable like women and disabled persons, heritage like both natural and cultural, following Sendai disaster resilience framework, and air quality, waste management, green and public spaces. So the regional development planning must link urban, peri-urban, rural areas via, there should be economic link, there should be social link, and environmental link. Therefore, all these three areas must have all these three links.